A group of students at George Washington University drew ire Tuesday night after projecting anti-Israel messages as well as criticism of the university and its president, Ellen Granberg. Glory to the martyrs, free Palestine from the river to the sea, end the siege on Gaza, GW, the blood of Palestine is on your hands, President Granberg is complicit in genocide in Gaza are some of the messages that were projected on this outside wall of the Gelman Library. Now, lawmakers on Capitol Hill blasted the move. Utah Senator Mike Lee posted on X, quote, "The students responsible for these messages aren't severely punished by GWU. Something is terribly wrong. Genocide isn't hip, cute, or in any way acceptable. GWU, do the right thing now." Florida Congressman and GW alum Jared Moskowitz posted, quote, "As an alumni of that university, they should launch an investigation. I look forward to seeing the university's statement on this." According to the university's paper, The GW Hatchet, President Granberg has defended students' right to free expression, but condemned rhetoric that, quote, glorifies acts of violence.
Yeah, what seems interesting about this is that there's a real semantic disagreement that's happening here, where many Muslim Americans, including Waleed Shahid, Justice Democrats formerly, I believe, who says, well, he doesn't condone this message, presumably because he thinks it's bad optics. His experience as a Muslim is that the word martyr, this is what he tweeted, it is important to understand for 2 billion Muslims worldwide, the word martyr in Arabic also refers to a civilian casualty in war. For example, on someone's tombstone, it might say Martyr Fatima Nasir, who tragically lost her life in war. So, if these students, perhaps ill-advisedly, from an optics perspective, use the word martyr when referring to the almost 6,000 now innocent Gazans who have been slain by Israel in the last 2+ weeks, that seems perfectly legitimate. And it does seem a little odd for the university administrator to come forward and say, we don't want to glorify genocide, when it seems that these students are very specifically arguing against genocide against Palestinians.
Okay, I think many people would rationally interpret glory to the martyrs to be an endorsement of the terrorist actions, the martyrs being people who have been killed, engaged in the terrorist actions against the Israeli people, which is why this is such an objectionable statement, why anti-Semitic people flagged it as deeply anti-Semitic.
It should be pretty easy to clear up if you approach the students in good faith and ask them, well, do you mean Hamas or do you mean the almost 6,000 people in Palestine who've been killed? At very least, you could have a more specific conversation. If they in fact say that they believe that Hamas is the elected government of Gaza and that they have a right to resist and they support that and they may or may not support the killing of innocent civilians, then you can get into a conversation about whether or not that is in fact an endorsement of targeting civilians that the university does not want to condone. But it seems a little premature given the context that apparently millions of Muslims understand and the word martyr being used somewhat differently. Yeah,
I mean, if I guess they could have made it crystal clear if they had just projected a swastika on the dorm where Jewish students are staying.
Why would they do that?
It abundantly clear.
Why would pro-Palestinian advocates at GW project a swastika on Jewish students' doors?
Because they're glorifying violence against Jewish people. I mean, that is what so many leftist activists are doing over and over again, and I'm calling it out as bad. I don't care if they're investigated but we're happy to call them
confused.
out.
So what you're saying is that you reject in whole cloth what Waleed Shahid is saying about the use of the word martyr here. And you're saying not only that, but you're saying that you think that the people these students are advocating for, the murder indiscriminately of Jewish people?
I'm saying if they had done that, there would be would anyone argue that it shouldn't be investigated, right?
No.
If it was a swastika?
And if I, waved a machete around on the set right now, that would also be a threat, but that is not what's happened. So let's talk about what's happened. What's happening is that they projected the following phrases: glory to our martyrs, divestment from Zionist genocide now, free Palestine from the river to the sea. So let's talk about those three phrases and what's objectionable in them. The martyr phrase, Muslims have put out there, people seem to have corroborated that it can be open to some interpretation, and that it's a phrase that's commonly used on tombstones of innocent people that were killed by attacks. that's disputable. If you think that it's poor optics, I think that's a perfectly reasonable.
And the swastika was like an Indian peace sign right before it got appropriated by the Nazis, but
you think that's
none
equivalent?
of us think that that's what their
you
people mean when they draw
you think
that.
That's equivalent? Well, I think if I went into an old building from like 1750 and saw that the trellis around the edge of the walls or the floors had swastikas in them, I would look at the context and say, okay, this is probably not about Nazis, because Nazis didn't exist when this house was built.
I think at some point it's so obviously excuse-making for people who condone violence. I mean, for people who are tearing down on various campuses the flyers of the abducted Jewish people that being held hostage. Those are being ripped down by pro-Palestinian activists on various campuses. Again, I've read the tweet from the Black Lives Matter group that was the paragliding. Like there are. They don't speak for all people.
This is what's a little confusing to me, Robby. On an individual basis, I don't think that people should tear down those signs. I think what they should do is put up the signs of all of the Palestinians that are getting murdered. I think that would be a much more effective form of protest. But that's because I think it's a much more effective form of protest. And I do think that while a translation error, I think that's really credible, frankly. If you can point to me to a bunch of tombstones, what are you going to say? Someone went back and changed all these tombstones? If you can point to me that it's very common in Arabic and in Muslim communities to refer to deceased as martyrs, who were innocents, then I think that's really credible. But we've also seen a long trend of phrases that do not have any anti-Semitic intent or implication built into them described as such. Being anti-Zionist has been described as anti-Semitic, and members of the ADL and other groups have specifically redefined Zionism in a way that implicates anti-Semitism, so that you can't say that you're against a Nakba. You can't say that you're against expelling 700,000 Palestinians from their land in 1948. You can't say that you're against Palestinians being kept in an open-air prison, or you just can't say that you're for an integrated state in which both Palestinians and Arab Palestinians and Jewish Israelis are given equal rights under the law without that being considered to be anti-Semitic, because the implication is people say, well, the Arabs will kill all of the Jews anyway, so we have to keep them in a cage. So, I'm pushing back against this because of that reason, and also because I don't choose to do this, because I don't want to ever say or do things that generate antagonism toward innocent members of the Jewish community. But I could sit here and play to you a number of clips from pro-Israel rallies, which I have alluded to, but which we have never played, in which Jewish protesters say we need to raze Gaza to the ground, turn it into a parking lot, incinerate them. We just talked about Ben Shapiro saying that Arabs like to live in sewers and Israelis like to build things. And more important than these individual actors, we've had members of the government of Israel.
Those things aren't passing by unnoticed. They're getting tons of contributions. In fact, when Ben Shapiro said that, it generated a lot of...
Can I finish it? Because you want to cut me off because you don't want me to say it, because it's so heinous that a person would say this. You want to sit here and read this off, that's fine. But I want to say out loud the heinous, inhumane, dehumanizing statements that have come out of not random students at a university, but from our government and from Israel's government.
Because you don't care what the university
Because Israel referred to Palestinians, that spokesperson, that government member, as human animals. Human animals. So I want to have a conversation that's proportional. It's not that I don't care. I think that there should be an investigation into what these students meant. And you should not impute what I feel onto me when we're trying to have a good faith conversation. I've said what I feel. I feel like there should be an investigation into what the actual intent was, because anti-Semitism is not okay on campus. But I do have a problem with the proportionality when there are literal people making policy decisions about incinerating and committing a genocide on a population of 2.3 million people that are not taken with the same gravity as the attention that is paid to what a bunch of GW students think.
It's not remotely equivalent.
It's not remotely equivalent.
No,
you're right.
Here, we're not paying equal attention to these things. We are covering every day quite a lot the decisions being made by the Israeli government and the U.S. government, and we're criticizing it. We're openly criticizing it. And that's appropriate to do. I don't want to be accused of downplaying the seriously bad. I mean, they are bad optics, that as you admit, and the really ugly and horrific things that certain activists are doing and saying that will frankly turn everyone off of the project of equal treatment for the Palestinians because it's so bad and so gross.
What, I'm sorry, you're concerned that we should no longer care about a genocide against 2.3 million people and all these images of babies being lifted from the rubble because some GWU students said something, even if they were anti-Semitic, if they're fully anti-Semitic, that their existence would turn you off of wanting to prevent that humanitarian crisis from happening?
Ripping down pictures of people who are being held hostage and being on video doing that is undermining the Palestinian cause.
That's interesting, because I can just speak for myself that hearing Israelis talk about Palestinians as rats and sewer creatures and pulling up lawn chairs, as happened in Israel, to watch Palestinians getting bombed as though it was a sporting event, and the incident of the great return in 2018, March of Return, where IDF snipers shot at the legs and feet and knees of hundreds of people who were Palestinians who were peacefully protesting. None of those actions make me want to be anti-Semitic or to be indifferent to the well-being of Jewish people in the United States, in Israel, and across the world. So I hope that everybody can hold in their head the idea that people and certain groups might engage in behaviors that you don't personally agree with without having such a kind of weak moral constitution that you are suddenly indifferent to genocide, whether it is a genocide against the people of Israel or a genocide that is currently ongoing against the people of Palestine.
I mean, we're just going around in circles. It betrays a weak moral constitution to endorse what Hamas did, and that is, and if these certain activist groups don't endorse it, they should make that a whole lot clearer than they have.
Yeah,
and some groups have left it very open to interpretation that they do, and that's a monstrous thing and bad optics, as you pointed out.
Yeah, there should be an investigation, as I said.
All right, more Rising right after this.